You know that feeling when you stumble across an old photo album and realize you have no idea who half the people are? That's how it all started for David. His grandmother's album was just packed with nameless faces, like a history book with all the captions torn out.
That's haunting in its own way, isn't it? I remember finding a box of letters from relatives I'd never met, and it's almost like you're staring at a secret you can't quite unlock. For David, it sounds like that album wouldn't leave him alone, even though he kept telling himself it was just some dusty relic.
Exactly. And then, out of nowhere, his cousin Benji swoops in with the idea of a heritage tour in Poland. Honestly, I get why David hesitated. There's something nerve-wracking about tracing your roots, especially when you're not sure what you're hoping to find.
Yeah, and Benji is such a contrast. He's the guy cracking jokes at the airport and chatting up strangers in line, while David's just soaking it all in, a mix of annoyance and maybe a touch of envy. It's funny how different people respond to the same loss. One goes silent, the other turns up the volume.
What struck me is how the tour itself was less about touristy sightseeing, and more like walking through living memory. Warsaw, Lublin, Krakow, places rebuilt on old scars. David wanted to feel something profound, but all he got was exhaustion.
It's wild how places can carry so much emotional weight. For Benji, being there seemed to spark something, like he finally felt visible, surrounded by those ghosts. Meanwhile, David's just trying to keep his feet on the ground, not sure what he's supposed to feel.
And then there's that evening at their grandmother's old house. Imagine knocking on the door and seeing a new family inside. The house painted blue with flowers in the window. It's both familiar and completely changed, a weird kind of time travel.
What really hit me was Benji leaving that stone on the doorstep. Such a small gesture, but loaded with tradition and meaning. And David, wanting to brush it off as silly, just nods. Sometimes that's the only bridge we can build in the moment.
That rooftop scene later on, wow. Just two cousins, city lights flickering, and Benji comes out with, "I think I'm broken." It's raw, no drama. David doesn't try to fix it. He just says, "Maybe we both are." That moment says more than 1,000 pep talks.
I love that. It's so real. Sometimes, just admitting you're not okay is the closest thing to healing. No grand solutions, just sharing the weight for a bit. It's almost like the city itself is listening, holding space for them to be honest.
You know, that actually reminds me of the difference between closure and recognition. Their journey didn't magically mend anything, but it did let them actually see each other without all the usual pretending.
And that's the heart of it, isn't it? Sometimes love isn't about patching up the cracks, but just refusing to let each other disappear. Pain hangs around, but maybe when you carry it together, it changes shape, makes room for love and memory to live side by side.
When their trip ended, nothing huge had changed, but both David and Benji left with something new. It wasn't about finding all the answers or fixing themselves. Instead, it was about carrying their history and each other a little differently.
Yeah, and growing up like that means understanding healing isn't just about forgetting pain. It's about remembering together. The beauty is in not letting those memories, or the people we love, fade away. That's a kind of courage, too.
Let's take the bones of that bittersweet film and spin them into a proper story, something warm, quiet, and human enough to tuck into your brain before sleep. A real pain. When David's grandmother passed away, she left behind a photo album full of faces no one could name. He told himself it was just history, dust and paper. But something about it wouldn't let him rest. So when his cousin Benji suggested they join a heritage tour in Poland, David said yes, even though every part of him wanted to stay home. Benji was everything David wasn't: restless, loud, allergic to silence. He joked at airport gates, made friends with strangers in line, and treated every moment like a scene from a movie only he could see. David watched, irritated and secretly jealous. The tour led them through cities rebuilt on loss: Warsaw, Lublin, Krakow, places where memory hung heavy in the air. At first, David tried to feel something profound, but all he felt was tired. Benji, though, seemed alive there, as if walking among ghosts made him feel less invisible himself. One evening, they visited the house where their grandmother had once lived. It was small, painted blue now, with flowers in the window. A family lived there, a woman, her husband, 2 children, and they smiled politely when the cousins asked to look around. Benji left a small stone on the doorstep, an old tradition. "So she knows we came," he said. David wanted to tell him it was silly. Instead, he just nodded. That night, they sat on the hotel roof, watching the city lights flicker like old memories. "I think I'm broken," Benji said quietly. David didn't argue. He just said, "Maybe we both are." It wasn't much, but it was honest. Sometimes honesty is the only kind of healing that works. When the trip ended, they went their separate ways. David back to his quiet home, Benji to wherever loud hearts go. Nothing miraculous had happened. The world was still cracked, but they had found something worth carrying. The knowledge that love isn't about fixing people. It's about not letting them vanish. Conclusion. The story of David and Benji isn't about closure. It's about recognition. The moment two people finally see each other without pretending. Their journey through the past teaches them that pain doesn't fade. It changes shape, finding room beside love instead of against it. And maybe that's what growing up really means, learning that healing isn't forgetting, but remembering together.